Hi, Todd Wente here with Path to Progress for April 21st, 2025. I'm here in my mobile office, a little later in the day, so the sun's coming through a little differently. Getting ready to head into the brick and mortar office, but not quite there yet. Had a good morning, had an opportunity to kind of settle in, and of course, as I frequently do, as a result of that time, I spent quite a bit of time thinking. And I was thinking about something that came to my attention a couple of days ago in some conversation with my wife and also with some other family members, and that is why we choose some of the actions that we do. I remember an article that I read as part of my study in philosophy. That talked about the idea of decision-making, that all decision-making, even that decision-making which we think is most rational, is motivated by emotion. And the author of this particular article was very clear about it. That had a lot of good research and presented some things, and it was a fascinating article. My boss at the time rebelled at that. He said, "No, I am a completely rational decision maker. I do not make any decisions on emotion." And everybody knew he was a liar because we'd watched him make decisions based entirely on emotion. Sometimes that emotion of pride, sometimes the emotion of being hurt, sometimes the emotions of arrogance, all kinds of emotions. But even when faced with clear information that would contradict the direction that he wanted to go, he held with the direction. Anyway, this idea that in spite of what we tell ourselves about our rational decision-making brain, that most of our decisions are actually made by emotion, and we use rationalities to justify the decisions that we've made with our emotions, was a fascinating concept, an interesting concept. And I started thinking about the way that I approach some of the choices that I make in life, the way that I lead my life in many ways. Not so much the question between rational and emotional, but the question between reality and perception. And I've talked with other people that say all the time perception is reality and all these kinds of things, and maybe that's true to a certain extent. But as I started thinking about it, I was thinking about it this morning because as I was going for my walk in my neighborhood as part of my morning exercise. I started feeling like I was a kid, like I was when I was a teenager. I live in the same town that I grew up in from about 10 years old. We've lived in the same small town in northern Utah for my family lived there until my parents lived there until they moved to another town. But by then I'd bought a house in that same town, and my wife and I have lived there now for 30 years. And so I've spent close to 40 years of my life in that town. Not counting the time that I spent at college and away on a service for my church, I've spent my whole life pretty much in that town. And so occasionally when I walk around town, I still feel like a kid. I don't necessarily see myself as a 56-year-old man, as a grown-up. I see myself as a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid. I've talked to my dad about some of that, and he says, I asked him one time, I said, when do you stop feeling like you're an 18-year-old kid? And he said, I'll let you know when it happens. My dad is 73. No, he's 77 this year. Sorry, Dad. So, it's an interesting deal. And I started thinking about some of the choices that my dad makes. And I started thinking about some of the choices that I make. And I started thinking about some of the relationship patterns that I'm in. And I realized that they are there because in those relationships I see myself as inhabiting a particular space, a particular role. Not because it's true, but because That's the way I see myself. If I'm going to make progress, real progress, I have to start seeing myself clearly, as I am. Influenced clearly by the roles that I hold and by the relationships that I've got. Influenced clearly by who I've been, but not limited by who I've been, but rather connected who I've been with who I am, and perhaps who I want to be. I struggle with that sometimes. I feel connected more so to who I was, not to who I am. I'm going to work on that today. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. I hope that's been useful for you. It's been very useful for me as I explore that. If this hasn't been useful, hopefully in the future another one will, and you'll give me another chance. In the meantime, my name is Todd Wente. This has been The Path to Progress. Hope to see you in the future. Nullum diem. Until then.